podcast app, you'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather, talking twins and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather, relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet feather, sweet feather, what do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather, no sex, just titillation.
Of course, today we're talking about Super Edition number 5. And, I think we're ready for the thrillers. We got the honky tonk, and then I think it's over to thrillers. And I think it's going to be a little bit nice change of pace. I did like it, but it's called Winter Carnival. I'm curious what you have to say out the gate, or 6-word review.
So I am
Hated? It looks like you hated.
This book was not for me. And not all books are for everybody. And that's what's so great about Francine is that she appeals. What?
I absolutely, sorry to interrupt you, but feel safe if you ever don't like or hate the books. Go ahead.
This was not good. This one's not good. This is not good.
Well, we don't have to say it's not good. We can say you didn't like it. So let's not go crazy here. Okay, let's keep it within.
This is a safe space. Say whatever you want. Don't say that.
Well, not good. It's a little bit fighting words here, but. And what did I say? I said I'm gonna set an intention. My intention that I'm gonna set today is to not be reactive and to not think it's always fun to have a debate.
But in your defense, it is sometimes fun to have a debate.
And that's gonna be the dance. That's the dance. Please.
Oh, a dance? You mean we'll get to go to a dance and we'll get to see the dance in the book? Oh, no. You'll promise a dance for hundreds of pages and give me no dancing. This book should not have been called Winter Carnival, because listeners, when I tell you we see not a minute of the Winter Carnival in the text, not a minute of it.
Okay, before we even do 6-word reviews, let's do a little back and forth ping pong of what should it have been called. Okay, great. I'll start. Bad mood holiday.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Lycra ski suit jealousy.
World's most boring twin swap.
Is it Christmas? It feels like it's Christmas, but you're not saying it's Christmas.
Yeah. So that I'd be like, this is not my suggestion, but on that it's like, fucking say it's Christmas, you cowards.
Literally, there's a Santa Claus. There is a Santa Claus figure in this book. There's a Christmas ghost figure in this book. Okay, and we'll get into it, but. There's something very interesting about it. It's all very Christmas coded, as it were. And, of course, coming off the heels of Special Christmas, we have to take this as, I think, more of a mid-late winter affair. So, that sort of rubs one the wrong way, I think, a little bit. Is a little bit of a bait and switch in this book in many ways. Many
Every way.
ways.
Every way. Winter Wasteland, another potential title for this text.
Our old friend, Avoidance.
Do we want to get to 6-word reviews, or do you have more potential titles?
Yeah, 6-word review, I guess. I have 7.
Me too.
Honorable mention leads girl to the brink.
Spoiler alert. Nobody dies or breaks up.
I mean, in theory, that would summarize the plot.
Sure. But in actuality, we will not?
Well, no, it's just this book. All right, let's just do it.
Yeah. I think one thing will be clarifying for listeners who are not reading along with us is you're going to be like, oh, shoot, did I miss something? They haven't talked about the Winter Carnival at all in any of their plot summary. Literally, it barely features in a book called The Winter Carnival. So stick with us. And if you're like, wait, they haven't talked about it, that's okay. Lean into the unknown.
It's a funny joke, actually. It's really a funny joke. It's sort of postmodern, honestly. because it's like literally called Winter Carnival. Page 2 and 3 are all about like there's the ice sculpture show and there's the mock Olympics and then there's the pizza party dance and then there's the ice queen's party dance and Edith and Winston are being co-chairs about it and what color tinsel are they getting, and then there's going to be the lodge and we're all going to be hanging out at the lodge. So I'm looking at this book, which by the way I have read, being like, okay, this is what happens. They go to Winter Carnival, which God knows what that means. The word carnival is also wrong for this book.
Yeah.
A carnival it was not. It was a lot of things. So there's that. Then on page, so I start this book being like, okay, my challenge is going to be understanding what they mean by carnival. I'm already a bit, so then I get to page 2, 3, and I'm like, oh, I have this nice list. So I literally write down being okay, I could orient myself to this. I'm like, what are we going to get? We're going to get Jess and Lila in crazy sort of ski bunny outfits and meeting some random guys by the ski lodge, orchestrating some cockamamie God knows what. And these guys ends up being either having knives, being 12, or being poor, or having some other identity lie that ends up, maybe there's a fashion show pageant and something funny happens at it. Okay, that's what I think we're going to get here. No, what we get is 200 pages anticipating this fucking carnival, which by the way, it's like, it's winter time. And the front, I'm sorry to spoil, is very fucking wintry. And you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it's like literally page 200, we get like 5 seconds of this fucking carnival and that's it. And it's all about Liz like having a slow mental break and then like getting to the carnival being like, I can't deal, I need to leave. And then she gets on a bus and you're like, oh, it's Runaway. Someone's going to stop her at the bus and then this book can be over. No, she actually makes it home, has a happening. And, we'll get to that, but it's not Winter Carnival. You want to see the cover?
Do we want to do any plot summary at all? Well, I guess we don't need any plot summary because the cover doesn't match it.
I guess one thing I do want to say is like, when I sort of jokingly said it about it being postmodern, I do think there is something very interesting about how some of these special editions really are, every one of them is called like perfect, wonderful, special, nice break holiday. And we start it and like, there's all kinds of stressed out dynamics going on. And that is real. Like that is true to life, which is that like in the culture and in our anticipation, like holiday times are supposed to be like benevolent, nice, happy, exciting things. But oftentimes it's associated with stressful family dynamics or pressures or expectations or your anticipate, like whatever it is. And that happens in these books. Like, for example, this thing of like, whenever Todd comes home to visit on the holidays, it like sends Elizabeth into this like unacknowledged tizzy. That happens again here. And it's all this under the surface stuff, but that is really realistic in a way. So I think the fact of the bait and switch of it all is kind of genius in that sense.
That's very generous of you. I think there are ways to read it that way. The other thing that I guess I should, at this point, it's my fault. We've read 4 of these previously. Every one of the previous ones has ended with like, I guess then we'll do whatever it is. Like, the last spring break
the camping trip started for real. Well, but he had 5 minutes left to go home.
It's like, of course, Robert, the Winter Carnival happens after the end of this book. How silly of you.
It's actually genius. It's actually gorgeous. If I was being you, I would say something about a sonnet.
Yeah.
But
God, if only you were being me right now. Try? No? Okay, fine. It is just like, Robert, you're stupid if you think a book called Winter Carnival is gonna have a Winter Carnival in it. No, it's gonna end with, and then we go to the Winter Carnival.
I mean, we saw neither winter nor carnival. I mean, nary a snowball was pitched before we had to turn around on that bus.
Yeah,
now,
true.
I think it's time for the cover. I mean, the back is the back. I mean, the back is what it is. It's a winter wonderland. Okay.
Yep.
So.
Was that's a tagline on the back? A winter wonderland, ... Are there ... dots?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Show me that couve.
No,
Please, God, please tell me that Jessica is wearing the silver lycra snowsuit. Ski suit. If she is not, and if Elizabeth is not wearing navy blue down. Okay, what am I looking at here?
It's actually gorgeous. It's hilarious. It's great. I love it.
It's bourgeois. I'm looking at my own cover now, so you don't have
to. Art. It's art.
It is and it's art.
And it's like makes the misleadingness of the book like times 100. Like, don't you think if you would have looked at this, you'd be like, oh my God, even more about how it's like not this.
I mean,
Like,
we've got
literally, or are you in Zermatt right now? Well, like, what? Are you like literally in a fucking mountain? Elizabeth is like being on the Price is Right. I'm sorry to like be doing your role right now, but I'm just like,
please.
Elizabeth is holding a fucking ice skate, like she's on the Price is Right, modeling it. Jessica is also actually giving the shopping network QVC, talking about the ways that her drawstring on her ski suit can kind of make the top tighter or looser, as well as a pair of skis. They look like they're selling a winter vacation package in the Showcase Showdown, as it were. And they're in front of this mountain, this gorgeously kind of articulated mountain in the blue sky, and you can just kind of feel the crisp air. And Elizabeth, sorry, I'm just overcome. Go, please.
Keep going. I'm loving this. I'm feeling the brisk air on my nose.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny, we could say, oh, we're always getting the time wrong, reading a book about winter when it's April. Guess what, friends? Well, if you live in nightmare called Canada like me, it is actually snowing. So that's nice for us. We're having it be the same time as in the book.
And for our listeners in the Northeast, apparently y'all are also getting a snowstorm, and it's supposed to be terrible there. So sorry to all listeners who are not in California. It is currently sunny and 75. Sorry.
Elizabeth is wearing a cowl neck, and it must be said this is the second cowl of the text. The first, of course, was Suzanne Devlin in Too Good to Be True.
It must be said. We would be remiss if we were not tracking the cowls of Sweet Valley.
Elizabeth's sweater is a kind of teal turquoise, same as the lettering on the book, and it's a Fair Isle kind of pattern. It's very nice, very slouched. I think she looks very casually elegant. Her hair is in it appears different style, because we always, of course, have her famous barrettes giving her pulled away at the sides look. And I think we must attribute it to the breeze, because if we look at Jessica accompanying her, her sort of typically side-swept bang has also been swept back. So I don't think we're to understand that the barrette has necessarily been abandoned. I think rather she has opted for anticipating the wind. She has decided that she's going to need something stronger. So she's opted for a larger barrette that encompasses both sides. Jessica's in a cute pink and white thing.
Your refusal to talk about Elizabeth's face speaks volumes. She just looks really strange to me. She's making a weird face. She's like opened up into a smile that does not reach her eyes.
They give her like an underbite. Oh, I don't say anything rude to the legend, but I don't know if that's intentional. You know what I mean?
It's not his best work. She doesn't look pretty. There, I said it.
Well, in taking side, Jessica was done dirty and not having any angles or cheekbones, and Elizabeth looked really pretty, and Jessica had no glint in her eye. So I'm kind of like, hey, I'm glad Jessica's prettier at this one.
Okay. That seems vindictive and right.
Right? Like,
that's something for an adult woman to be, happy about. Yeah, Jessica looks much prettier. She's not wearing the new silver ski suit that we spend so much time talking and thinking about in the text. But I like the pop of pink. It goes nicely with the pink around the border.
I love this icy blue. It's so effective.
Yeah. It's effective if you don't read the book. You know what I mean?
If you want to be lied to, yes. It's effective in conveying and selling the lie. Yes.
Yeah, it's hard. This is going to be a hard one, listeners. And it may be a hard listener ep for you. It's going to be a hard recorder ep for me.
Well, we're not necessarily here to have fun.
No, we're definitely not. We're here to document the text. Pardo kind of started us off, and I think the quickest part we can do is, what is the quote-unquote Winter Carnival? Basically, Friday after school, juniors, seniors, and alumni go up to the mountain. There are teacher chaperones. They spend 2 nights in the hotel. During the days, there are all sorts of planned wintry activities. And then they all go home. There's a bus that takes them, but they are allowed to drive themselves up if they don't want to ride the bus. There's also like a public bus that gets you pretty close.
All true things. All true things.
All true things. So that's the entirety of the Winter Carnival portion.
But so just to set the scene here a little bit, this thing we call the Winter Carnival, is something that everyone is anticipating, and it's going to be a nice winter holiday. And the book is starting us off with, well, Liz is wondering, why aren't I happy when everything is good and the winter carnival even is coming up? And Robert is feeling empathy already.
Mm-hmm.
So, Liz is in a bad mood, okay? She's feeling a little bit of cumulative resentment against Jess's flakiness and inconsiderateness, and combined with Liz feeling a little down on herself for whatever other reasons, is sort of combining to make her feel frustrated. And that is happening alongside some emerging prickliness in the air vis-a-vis Liz and Jeffrey vis-a-vis Todd's impending arrival.
There's also additional prickliness in the air. I'm not going to try and use vis-a-vis. I don't think it's not my word. Is that okay? There's additional prickliness in the air about something that very much is my word, which is trivia. So Liz and Enid are really excited about this upcoming TV show because they are, and I quote, trivia buffs, something that we have heard of 0 times previously in the text.
If Liz actually was a buff, it's something like, or hearing about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if she's a secret buff and it's her secret dream, she never tells anyone.
Her quietest
hearing about it.
Her quietest little, no one will know. I don't normally tell people this. You're only the 300th person I've told. But what's going to happen is it's a local TV quiz show where teams of 2 students compete against each other. And to figure out who is going to be on the show, they have this completely random thing where there are 10 sample questions that you answer and then submit. And then they do a drawing of everyone who got the questions right. And they pick 2 teams to compete head to head. And whoever wins that head to head untelevised game then gets to be on the televised show. Liz and Enid really want to be on the show. Jessica and Amy Sutton also really want to be on the show, and they kind of copy off of Liz and Enid's work and send in their answers, and then they get picked and Liz and Enid don't get picked.
The fact that the sort of like anticipated climactic thing is that Jessica and Amy are going to compete against this other pair of high school kids or whatever, and that's not the televised thing, but that's how they do that. And then one of them gets to be on the show. Really, it's like reminding me of in either Runaway or Crash Landing when Jessica is preparing the big stakes final thing that sets her off, and she's like, wants to make her family this really nice dinner.
Yes.
But then the thing that happens is we see her do a dry run where she makes a different meal, and then that meal gives them food poisoning, then the other dinner never happens. It's like, well, why didn't you just make that the dinner? It's like, what if there's literally no reason not to? It's like, why not make this be the show?
I will say that the process of getting on Jeopardy was I took an online test, then I went in person and played a mock game of Jeopardy so they could see what I'd be like on TV. And then they called me literally basically as soon as they could to be like, we want you on TV.
Is there anything you want to share in general about your Jeopardy experience? If you want to get into anything Jeopardy, I'd love to hear it.
Well, so I'm happy to talk a little bit about my Jeopardy journey. Listeners, if you don't know, I did lose. And so that is kind of where I spend most of my time in my Jeopardy journey. But
no,
I will
wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to interrupt you, but lose is not, you didn't lose. I meant after this, I'm not going to interrupt you. You didn't lose. You didn't win.
I didn't win.
That episode.
Listeners, I did not win that episode, but I did win at getting onto that episode, which.
But also, the
Jessica
word lose makes it sound like there was 100 people and you were dead fucking last, like in the bicycling book, the Barry at the end. No, he lost.
He lost. Barry is a loser. Robert, you're not a loser.
Yeah.
Chrome Dome's nephew, now there's a loser.
No, but seriously, it's literally like what happens in this book is Liz tells her parents, I lost the essay contest. And they're like, oh, sorry, honey. She's like, yeah, I only got honorable mentions. They're like, oh, that's like what, 3rd, 4th out of however. It's like, oh, yeah. So don't say losing on Jeopardy. It's the same thing as saying honorable mention. I think, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
I do. Yeah. I see your point. I definitely see your point. So I will say that they did get lots of the kind of vibes very, very, very right in this text. So Jessica and Amy are selected to audition in basically a very similar way that I was selected to audition. And then they begin the process of trying to study. And they find that it's like pretty difficult to study for a general knowledge trivia bowl situation. But they do find that things like knowing the longest river in Africa and like knowing all of this stuff does help them. And that was very similar to my experience. I too kind of like tried to study and tried to know what I could. And the Coral Sea did come up, and I only knew it from studying, so I was happy about that. And I wish that this were the televised. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardo has raised her hand. Dr. Pardo.
I'd be very curious to know more about studying. What is it, like reading almanacs? Like, how do you study?
Yeah, I mean, so there's actually been lots and lots of stuff on this because certain things are more likely to come up on Jeopardy than other things. And so there are literal books that are now kind of out of date about what you could study. But statistically, things like Shakespearean plays come up a lot. Things that have won the Pulitzer Prize come up. So it's like just studying to know, like, okay, if you're going to do geography, for example, it's like knowing the 5 biggest lakes, knowing like what rivers are major and important and what cities they run by, knowing like mountains, volcanoes, that kind of thing, knowing capitals. So there's like a finite amount of things you can study, and you have to know that like most of what you study is not actually going to come up. And so lots of what you're doing is kind of refining your ability to trust your quick recall, because so much of it is kind of like they ask a question, you have to come up with the answer as quickly as you can. So it's really just refining your reflexes and trusting that like the thing that's going to come to your mind first is going to be right and just going for it. Now, Pardo has grabbed a book, and I'm curious about what you grabbed. Oh my God, when you can. So Pardo, why am I the one talking? Please, Pardo.
It's a book called Jeopardy. No, it's a book called the Jeopardy book.
Did you just have it?
Yeah, I bought it once at a thrift store. It has Alex in California, actually. Huh. It's Alex Trebek on the front, very young because this is old. Yeah. And it says the answers, the questions, the facts, and the stories of the greatest game show in history. It's all about like how it was created. There's an introduction by Merv Griffin.
Ooh.
And there's also a whole bunch of questions.
Oh.
If you want to play.
I don't, but that's fun. The only other things I will say is that Alex Trebek, may his memory be for a blessing, was a complete and total love. He was the sweetest man in the world. The way it works is they film 5 shows a day, and there's a lunch break. So it's 3 shows, lunch break, 2 shows. And the audience changes between the first block of shooting and the second block of shooting. Like before lunch and after lunch, it's 2 different audiences. And it's filmed in real time. So like when they go for an ad break, we stop playing and he does some pickups. Once he's run out of those things to do, he takes questions from the audience and he answers every single question. And the most beautiful thing that I saw was there's lots of time. So there's lots of questions that get asked. And so in the morning and the evening, he probably got the same question several times. And every time he answered it, he was giving like, oh, that's such a good question. Like, oh, and he was like really giving of himself in a very, very beautiful way. The other thing is, so I was the 4th game of the day. So I was right after lunch. We can talk about whether blood sugar levels impacted how I played. That's not the point. But so what happens is you're standing there and then he comes out and they like play the music and you can hear the music. It's literally like being inside your TV. And so like they start the music and he comes out and I must have just been like beaming because I was inside the TV, and he literally goes, "Robert's really excited to be here today." Like I was so over the top excited to be there that Alex Trebek literally remarked on it. And then in our interview give and take, he was clearly having a good time and he gave me more time than he gave other people. And he clearly
I remember because you showed the photo and you talked about your bachelor party or something.
I talked about my bachelor party. No photos shown, but I did talk about my bachelor
No,
party.
I saw the photo.
What photo?
Am I hallucinating?
Yes.
Well, let me say my perspective. Robert had a very memorable interview thing. Alice was like, "So I heard you really love Jeopardy," or something. And Robert was like, "Actually, I love Jeopardy so much that my bachelor party was actually Jeopardy themed. And like, I dressed up as Alex Trebek or something, and then showed a picture of you with like all your friends. Like there was some sort of, maybe you showed it to me and I just made that association. Yeah. I swear I saw it on my TV screen.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I definitely have shown you pictures of my my Jeopardy themed bachelor party.
But
Oh,
are you
what?
100% sure Alex wasn't like, and we have the picture and they showed it?
I feel pretty sure. I mean, I blacked out a lot of stuff, but
Right.
I feel pretty sure about that. So he loved me. The other thing was that Twitter briefly was like alive with love for me. And it was like funny love. Like there was like memes making fun of me about how like I clap really loud and hard, which is true. Somebody said something funny about how I went out of my way to let everybody know I was gay, which I absolutely was doing. I like went out of my way to be like, I had a bachelor party. And then I married my husband, who is a man, because I'm a homosexual. Alex,
Yeah, I
please
remember
understand
that.
that I'm homosexual. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
People tweeted about it.
No, but like that's good. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Everyone should
obviously.
be gay.
And like everyone should talk about being gay.
Yeah, absolutely. My only regret is that I wasn't more sexually explicit about the ways that we make love.
Did you ever have the thing where like you tried to push the buzzer but it didn't go?
Oh yeah, all the time. So if you buzz in before he's done reading the question, it locks you out.
Literal nightmare.
And if someone else buzzes in before you, it locks you out. So it's all about like that sweet, sexy window. I mean, I always like, oh, I got this one. And they're like saying like Jennifer. And I'm like, no, it's Robert, not Jennifer.
Like, were you so nervous? Like,
yeah, 110% yes. I will say that I still do like think about it all the time. Like I'm still traumatized and triggered and I don't use those words lightly, listeners, but like actually I do have like
actual
persistent, intrusive, negative thoughts around. It's okay. And it was still worth it. Like, I mean, I got to meet Alex fucking Trebek.
Well, I don't even remember what the dumb fucking question was at the end. That whatever.
Listeners, feel free to Google Robert Marks Jeopardy and look at the final Jeopardy and be like, oh yeah, I would have known that. And you know what? You would have. I would have. It's just like you're there in the lights and you're just freaked out and you're like, oh fuck, my whole life has come down to this. And you're just like, my brain shut off.
Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
It's called Me Learning How to Do Rubik's Cube. And I'm sitting around in my house. I'm basically like watching TV doing it like every fucking second. It's like become like the easiest thing in the world. I went to my next door neighbor's house, the one who showed me the Rubik's Cube. She instructed me to sit on a chair on her porch and she stood over me like this. And I started doing it and I literally like fucked up in two.
Yeah, of course.
Like I haven't done and that's from one human being watching me. So being in such a pressure, you might think sitting at home, oh, I would know that. But actually, it's not exactly so easy when you're actually doing that.
So true. Speaking of which, I texted you a image from a book I was reading about a woman doing a mirrored Rubik's Cube. And were you interested?
I thought I put a heart on it.
Oh, you maybe put a heart on it. Sometimes if I text you late at night for you, and then I wake up in the morning, you've like hearted something and texted stuff. And so I don't track all of it as well as I should.
And I worry about that. I worry about that sometimes because I think, oh, well, they're going to get the notification for that. And they're not going to see that there was also that. So I got to do it backwards order. So I don't know. But anyhow.
It's hard.
So you got anything to say about this book?
So the central tension, I guess, is, I mean, what is the central tension? Is the central tension Liz and Jeffrey? Is it Liz and Jess? Is it ski suit related? Like what did you take from this?
Literally just like Liz doing Liz plus a bad mood. You know what it reminds me of?
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I'll never forget it. This is like an Archie comic that I literally read when I was probably 9. And it's Betty and Veronica, which of course we could compare to Liz and Jess. And I think that should be a side episode we'll do one day. They show up at school.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was Betty.
Mm-hmm.
Betty was in a bad mood. She's like, I'm down in the dumps.
Mm.
And Veronica's like, oh no. And like all day, Veronica's trying to help her or make her feel better or whatever. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And then maybe she talks to a teacher or a parent or something.
Mr.
Like,
Collins, maybe?
If only Sweet Valley had like a fraction of the parenting going on in Riverdale. Whatever trusted adult goes to, let's say it was Veronica, like, she's like, I don't know how to get her out of this mood. And they go, Veronica, have you ever been in a bad mood? She's like, yeah, of course. Have you ever had a day where you just felt whatever? And she goes, yeah. And they're like, well, what happened? She's like, what do you mean? They're like, how did you get out of it? Like, you seem happy today. She's like, oh, I don't know. I guess that's just what happens. And that was the lesson of the comic. A bad day is fine. We all have them. You don't have to fix it. Sometimes you can just let your feelings happen and it's not a problem to solve, right? It's the Buddhist, it's the just observe and the witnessing, right? And the being present with. And it's like a lot of the first few chapters of this book is Liz sort of problematizing, do I have something to be upset about, quote unquote, or not? And why am I in a bad mood? And sometimes you might be in some winter doldrums and maybe that's okay. You know, I do think, yeah, there's some cumulative things that have been putting a needle in her butt or whatever the expression is, but like, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely been some cumulative things that have been, and I quote, putting a needle in her. But I also just feel like she keeps saying, like, is this seasonal affective disorder? And I'm like, yes, it is. Like, get yourself a vitamin D lamp or whatever, and that will help. Take a nap.
I think it's really about Todd and Jess. It's the anxiety and anticipation and excitement and confusion of Todd's visit. And then it's the just her being annoyed of Jess. You know, if we want to situate it historically, we could also remind ourselves it's coming off the heels of the New Jessica.
Yeah.
And the New Jessica was all about Jessica differentiating herself from Liz and separating herself. And this book starts with Liz entering an essay contest with an essay about how she feels about being a twin called Double or Nothing. And that made me think of the New Jessica because it's basically saying we're double or we're nothing. So we may also be having some lingering anxiety that was, or lingering whatever that was created by that.
Yeah.
That we thought was so resolved when they both had the blonde hair in the fashion show. But did it actually resolve everything?
I do think one of the interesting things about these texts taken together is the ways that they subvert that kind of neat storybook ending, where it's like, oh yeah, like we resolved this, now we're good to go. And it's like, oh no, sweetheart, you haven't. And they've done it with like the grieving of Stephen. They've done it with like a lot of different aspects. I think it's actually really cool. The other thing where you're talking about like her tension with Jessica, it must be said, we'd be remiss if we didn't say Jessica is being pretty hard to swallow, as they say. She's being a real not good time.
Yeah. Some stuff she does and Liz has no control over it. Like she steals Liz and Enid's trivia answers to submit as her own. Like that's really a shitty thing to do. And that's not something Liz like enabled in any way. But
yeah. Oh yeah. And
then there's a thing where Jeffrey, like part of the reason things get tense with Jeffrey is because Jeffrey plans this beautiful date for them to go to Tiberino's, and he has this like whole sexy thing where he's gonna like tell her to go take a bath first and luxuriate, and they both have this weird kink for clean soap smell, which has been also a thread over a few books. I don't know if you noticed. He always smells like clean soap and she's horny for it, and now she smells like clean soap. Anyway, Jess's turn to make dinner, and Jess ditches her to go do something, and she like can't get in touch with her, and she's like, well, I guess I have to do it. So she tells Jeffrey, like, I can't do our date anymore. And he's like, well, he said what I was exactly thinking, which is basically, you should make there be a natural consequence, which is just don't do it. Tell Jess you didn't see her note, or just don't say anything. Go ahead on your own plans because you have no obligation not to. This wasn't your responsibility. Your parents will come home, be annoyed, and get mad at Jessica, and this will literally never happen again. Right? And Liz is like, but I can't. Mom's just off the heels of a big stressful project at work. It's like, okay, they can order pizza. Like, what is this?
For about 80% of the book, I was like, oh, I know what my 6-word summary is going to be. It's going to be Jeffrey is in the wrong book. Because it's just like, he is a real person having real human being thoughts while Liz is lizzing out over all this stuff. Like,
right?
I have to make them dinner. And it's like, Jeffrey's like, well, they're adult human beings. They'll figure it out. But then towards the end, Jeffrey ends up belonging in this book and acting a little bit not perfect. Still nowhere near like this. And then I was like, oh, maybe Jeffrey belongs in these books some. But it is just truly, it's very refreshing to see someone like Jeffrey in this text. And then it's like almost doubly infuriating because no one ever listens. Same with Enid. Enid just like sees through the bullshit and is like, why don't you just say something? Why don't you do this? Oh, it sounds like he probably isn't cheating on you. And she's just like, no, Liz is like, I can't listen to that. I need to be having my anxiety spirals.
I mean, we've now seen a pattern with Liz where she sacrifices the people that are like the most loyal in her life for the more unavailable ones. So in this book, she's treating Jeffrey the way that she treated Enid when Amy first came.
Yep.
I think it's particularly important that like the reason this whole thing starts in the beginning with Todd and Liz and Jeffrey, if they're being a conflict, is that Todd's coming home.
For the
But-
Winter Carnival.
He's coming home for the Winter Carnival, whatever.
Yeah.
So say that starts on Friday. They're supposed to like leave the bus after, soon after school, whatever. And like obviously Jeffrey and Liz are gonna go to the pizza party together on Friday, duh. And Liz like hasn't told Jeffrey that actually she might have to cancel because she agreed to go to this PTA awards ceremony with Todd because he's getting an award for being a big brother. And she thought it was a different day, but it turns out it's that day or whatever. But like she hasn't confirmed that with Jeffrey yet or whatever. And it's like the thing with Jeffrey was previously agreed to and confirmed. And Todd's thing is like the precarious one. And he's the one she has less of a loyalty to because he's like her, not even getting into whether it's cute that they're doing this or not, but assuming Jeffrey thinks that's kosher and fine or whatever. But like still, she should prioritize Jeffrey. And it's really weird that she doesn't.
And then when Jeffrey basically says, it's kind of weird because you don't need to go to this PTA awards dinner. It makes no sense for you to go to this PTA awards dinner. We already had plans. Liz's response is like, it's unfair that you demand that I cut Todd out of my life. And how dare you think that I'm not allowed to care about him anymore. And it's like, Liz, you know, we're all reading this book, right? It's like one of those moments where it's like a reality show and you're like, you know, you're on TV, right? Like, Liz, we all just read what he said. So what your reaction doesn't match this at all. You're just Lizzing out. And it made me feel bad for Jeffrey, of course, who, it must be said, his hair glints in the sun and people like it. He even looks good in overhead fluorescent lighting. They make a point to note.
There's a moment where it's like, oh, this is the last chance for like, listen, Jeffrey to figure it out. Cause he like does this dramatic thing of being like, leaving her note that's like, Liz, if you're reading this, then you already know. I'm going to Las Palmas Canyon to clear my head. Meet me by Highway 7 at 6:30. If you're not there, I'll think the worst. I'm like, okay. And Liz is like, okay, well, Jess, if you're really going to be the good sister that you are, because this is your freaking last chance and I'm really, really, really mad, you better fucking bring that car back by whatever time so that I can go to meet Jeffrey because, of course, it's the 80s and we don't have cell phones. Okay, and he's going to think the worst. And Jess is like, of course. But then after trivia audition, she forgets and goes for pizza with the trivia guys. So Liz has no car. And instead of, like, she obviously can't call Jeffrey in the moment or whatever because he doesn't have a cell phone. But instead of even like calling him later the next day or whatever to apologize, she just avoids him. And so it just, the tension keeps escalating. Jessica decides to intervene by like telling Todd, you're coming in between them, like tell Liz not to go to this thing with you. And Todd's like, okay, Liz, don't go to this thing with me. Just go to the carnival, it's fine. And Liz is like, oh my God, everyone hates me. Poor me, poor me, poor me. And then Liz decides to take advice from Jessica on trying to be remote and mysterious, like basically play hard to get with Jeffrey. So she acts very chilly to Jeffrey, which obviously has the reverse of desired effect, which makes him confused and upset, understandably. For some reason, Jessica's like, oh, let me impersonate Liz to like make up with Jeffrey at the ski lodge or something.
Jessica forges a note that says, hey, Jeffrey, I do still want to be with you. I do want to go to this pizza party with you. Meet me at 6:30 and we'll patch everything up. Signed, Elizabeth. And then she's like, oh, I'll just tell Liz that I did this, and then Liz will go meet Jeffrey. But then she doesn't have a chance to tell Liz because she and Amy Sutton missed the bus to get to the Winter Carnival.
And they don't have cell phones.
They don't have cell phones. And so instead of just having Liz be 5 minutes late to meet Jeffrey and telling Liz, she instead says, oh, I'll just pretend to be Liz. So she pretends to be Liz to talk to Jeffrey to say, let's get back together. A big gossip sees her, tells Liz, hey, I saw your twin talking to that boy. Liz gets really upset and leaves. Now, of course, leaving a winter carnival is a hard thing to do. So she has to get a ride from Kent Matthews to go back to the bus station and then catch a bus and go back home.
And we're like, oh, snowy bus.
Yeah.
Like, so she's the only person on the bus.
Which is inexplicable. Sorry. No way
And that's what gets us into the kind of Christmas energy here, is we're getting into fantasy. And so the driver is very clearly Santa Claus. He's like, "Oh, you sweet young nice girl. Well, it's just us, and let's go before the weather gets bad. And why don't you sit up front near me, and we'll be friendly together?" And she's like, "Okay."
Which is like red flag central.
Until you realize it's Santa Claus. Then you're like,
Even
okay,
after.
there's obviously gonna be a car accident like on the way home, and then everyone's gonna make up. But that doesn't happen. She like gets home safe, and you're like, huh? Then she's like in the Wakefield's house, and it's like dark, the parents aren't home, and they like haven't left a note because like no one's supposed to be home to see any kind of note, so it makes sense they're just out or whatever. And Liz is like, "Oh well, let me just fall asleep, have a bunch of nightmares, and then quote unquote wake up to the phone ringing." Ring, ring. Hello?
This is the police. I'm a corrupt
no.
institution.
Oh no, haven't you been abolished yet?
Unfortunately, not at this time. But even more unfortunate than that is that your sister, Jessica, has been in a terrible, terrible car accident. She's in critical condition. You must immediately away yourself to the hospital.
Oh no, I hope this has nothing to do with before I went to bed wishing to myself, I wish she'd never been born. I hope I didn't bring this on by some sort of karmic sequence.
So much of a monkey's paw.
She gets to the quote-unquote hospital, everything's wonky. Another thing that tells us that this might not be reality is that the doctor on call is her pediatrician. Her pediatrician that she hasn't seen in 20 years or whatnot, whose eyeglasses are producing a strange magnifying effect. And he's like, "Sorry, Liz, like we did all I could, but like she's dead." And we're like, okay. And then it's like everyone's having a memorial for dead Jessica, and she's very dead. And Steven and mom and dad are all being sad at home. And Liz is talking to Enid, and Enid being like, "Liz, are you okay?" And Liz is like, "I guess." And then she wakes up.
Yep.
And Jeffrey and Jess and Kara and Steven are all home being like, "Oh, Liz, oh, why did you leave the Winter Carnival? Let's all go back together."
And then they do.
Mhm.
It is. I have on this podcast myself taken a strong, strong stance against the "it was all just a dream" kind of narrative creation. And I'd like to kind of reaffirm that stance. I mean, it was not good. The main major tension of the text is nothing, because it's just a guilt dream that Liz has.
Well, what it is them being like, "Okay, well, it's winter book. We're doing this thing at the end. We're having conflict. Conflict means there has to be a medical emergency at Joshua Fowler Memorial." And they're like, "But, we have our sort of quota, and we're supposed to only do that every other book. And now we did it in the last one. Okay, it's going to be a dream. Okay, perfect, because it's Christmas ghost and the dream, and I wish she'd never been born. Let's all go home to our wives."
Yeah, I did too. I'm going to go home to my wife. I did make the note, like, poor Jessica, like she gets cheated out of even having her own real near-death experience. It has to be fictional and in a dream. Like, Liz has had so many real near-death experiences. Jessica should get one too. I mean, she was held at knife point by that guy, of course.
Like, literally not to be a monkey paw, but you literally should be careful what you wish for.
Oh, fuck.
Something that really annoyed me was, like, just again, to the dysfunction of the Wakefield, the way they handle conflict in their home. I made a joke recently about how, like, they're so conscious of, like, making a scene when they're Guidos to be like, "Girls, like, don't fight," or whatever. And I was like, okay, they're Guidos. But there's a scene where they're, like, having dinner at home, and Jessica and Liz are, like, expressing that they're upset with each other. And the parents are like, "The dinner table isn't the place for this." And Mr. Wakefield's like, "Yes, like, dinner is the place for edifying conversation." And I'm just like, if your family dinner table in your home isn't the place where these girls can actually express themselves, go fuck yourselves. They're literally not available for 1 second.
And I think we see, I mean, one of the things I noted in the opening chapter was that Liz is having all of these thoughts about how frustrated she is with Jess. And she keeps saying, like, "Oh, I can't have these disloyal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be thinking these things. I'm just being a brat. I can't feel my feelings." So it's interesting to me that we see this, like, suppression coming from the outside. Like, the parents are saying, "Don't talk about that. Don't feel those feelings." And then Liz has internalized it and said, like, "Oh, it's disloyal for me to be upset that my sister stole my trivia answers and is now going to be in the trivia contest."
Because she
accuracy.
thinks of everything in extremes of black and white. It's like she thinks that there's two options. One is she quote unquote has a right to feel this way, right? And that just sucks, and that she's right to feel this way, and that everything's bad. The other way that she could feel, that is the other option for what reality is that actually everything's good, and she was just overreacting when she thought that way, and everything's fine, and she feels okay about Jess. So yeah, the first chapter is like her, like one morning she wakes up being like, she actually decided after a good night's sleep, like it was fine. And then Jessica does something to piss her off, and she's like, oh no, actually Jessica sucks. I wish she'd never been born. I don't know. Again, by the end of this book, we haven't really necessarily had any growth in terms of communication skills. And like
Nope.
Liz is still, again, I hope Jeffrey has done his best in this book to try to, make her address things. I don't know.
Yeah, I just feel like he's being asked to do much more work than any high school boy should be asked to do. He's not a trained therapist.
Who would you put him with, Jess? Who deserves him?
On her best days, on her rock around the clock days, Jess, but on
Like,
many
is there
days,
someone
not even
better?
Jess. Like somebody that we don't know enough about to know how problematic they are. Like
Okay.
a cool girl, Dana Larson, like a Regina Morrow.
Okay, Regina. I like Regina more than Dana. Dana, well, you haven't read
I know.
Dana, I do know she's problematic, but
Yeah,
not in any actual way, but and like
but not
we
good enough for
know-
our Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey needs more.
Yeah. One thing I also thought was interesting about their psychology is Liz is processing through her feelings, and she's like able to see that she is jealous of Jessica. And that's right after she said that Jeffrey is the jealous type. And I was like, I actually don't think Jeffrey is the jealous type. I think you're projecting your own jealousy and insecurities onto Jeffrey.
Hondo P. She loves to describe herself as not the jealous type.
Right. But
She's
she
very-
is. And so to deal with it, she's
almost pathologically jealous, you could say.
Yeah. Oh, and then we get the big honorable mention. We find out honorable mention right when we find out that Jess and the cheerleading squad is going to All States. And I just got so sad. I wrote, this is so relatable, frowny face, about Elizabeth feeling like she lost when she got honorable mention.
Yeah, it is. One thing I thought was funny was that there was what I think was a reference to the rules. Jessica's giving like advice to Liz about she should play hard to get with Jeffrey, and she goes, remember what that dating book said? The one mom gave us years ago that we used to crack up over? It never hurts to let a boy worry a little. It must be rules, right?
It must be the rules. Also,
Yep.
Alice's parenting is years ago. So we're saying that we're like 12 or 13 is giving a 12 or 13-year-old girl a copy of the rules to just read. The dereliction of duty is disgusting.
Well, it was very similar thing in our house, but
Ooh.
instead of the rules being the book, it was Miss Piggy's rules.
Oh,
And
I'm
that was the
listening.
book that was my introduction to the rules. Like I thought the rules was like based on Miss Piggy's rules.
I like that. I would like to look into it. If we're hating on Alice, Alice buys Jessica this beautiful silver ski suit that everyone's obsessed with, and then goes, I wanted to get you something too, but they didn't really have anything. And I knew you wouldn't go for something like this. Then looking anxiously at Elizabeth, did I do the right thing? I mean, just the absolute narcissism of like not buying something for your daughter and then asking her to reassure you that you did the right thing by not meeting her needs. Fucked.
Well, I could see her saying like, at that particular store, she found that particular item. She's gonna get something for Liz too. She hasn't found it yet. She wants to get something she likes. Like I could give her the benefit of the doubt in that sense. But what we then see, of course, is that Liz is like, oh, of course, no, I would want something more like navy or whatever. But then she is realizing that she resents what have become the sort of defining differences, these characteristics that they've decided they have, and she resents that she gets. It's one thing if she sort of chooses it, but for people to assume, it's like starting to put a needle in her sort of rectum, as it were. And and I found that very relatable. And that's why I think it was such a nice moment when in the new Jessica, we had the fact that Grandma Wakefield sent Elizabeth the peach dress and Jessica the history book, because everyone reads that as like, I guess she doesn't know what they want. No, what she's bestowing upon them with those gifts is like her actually making space to say like, you can be this too, right? And like Jessica and Liz need to hear that. No one does that for them.
Yeah, because they don't have parents.
Oh, there's a book that happens that makes me very frustrated, where all I'm gonna say is Liz. It's like her version of the new Jess, basically.
Yeah.
Ugh,
I hope she cuts her hair. I wish she has something permanent. Not cutting her hair is permanent, but still.
face tattoo.
A face tattoo. Oh, that would be so good.
Small note, I loved that when Jessica was impersonating Liz for Jeffrey, she's like, oh shit, I'm wearing very Jess clothes. Like, so she really tries to do it with her manner. And it said that it was talking in like a self-righteous tone. And Jeffrey's like, oh, hey, Liz.
That looks right. I love that we get a tiny bit of insight, not that it's huge. Winston's the king of trivia. So he rules two kingdoms, starch and trivia.
Yeah, I know you're
Loved
gonna like that.
All I can say is Winston, goals. I love Winston. Big Winston head over here.
Well, I mean, I've already told you there's a scenario that can happen with Mother Nature and Winston, but there's another thing that's going to happen with Winston. All I'm going to say is Winston may be in a scenario, and some ethical questions may arise in a scenario. That's not a spoiler.
That's not a spoiler. I want Winston to be unimpeachable. I love him more than anything.
Don't worry.
We've got a lot of like message play where it's like, oh gosh, must have been so annoying to live in a home without an answering machine and to be so dependent on someone writing down the message, giving you the message, etc.
I'm like, literally, how do people write books now? It's like every problem in the world is solved with a phone.
Yeah, I do totally. Every single miscommunication. It's like, well, I guess they could be in a tunnel for a little bit where they can't get a text message. But then they come out the other side of the tunnel. It's like, oh no, okay. Sorry, I need to go pick up Teddy at this time.
Also, I was like, Liz. Liz was very mad, understandably, about Jessica failing to convey a message that had to do with driving Collins' kid, Teddy, home from a party, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he ends up getting a ride home with the kid's parent. And Liz is like, but it's so irresponsible. And like, I'm the babysitter, whatever. I'm like, Liz, never forget, and too good to be true, when you just let Suzanne go babysit for Teddy and let her even deliver that phone call to Collins as a fucking FYI.
Insane. Never forget Robert not realizing how big a deal that was. I mean, I've learned, I've grown.
Bad babysitting behavior.
That's BBB, as we call it in the business.
I mean, one thing that it must be said, Stephen loves to pretend that he is smart and that he's into his books at his college and his absurdist plays as if that's something. And then in this one, he decides he's a psychoanalyst. And Liz is telling everyone about her dream where Jess died. And he's like, oh, but you said that before you had your dream, you thought, I wished she wasn't ever born. And that made you feel guilty. And this is a textbook dream of being guilty, according to Freud. Aren't I so smart?
Just get your own life. Like, why are you at the Winter Carnival? I know it's open to alumni, but like, you shouldn't be here.
This is why I don't think the Bellflower was a real ship. Because if Stephen didn't come home every single week, his safe space is really at home and with teenagers.
He puts himself in some situations where it's like, don't be there. Although also I think in the 80s and 90s, like older guys hanging out with high school girls was so normalized and so gross.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sweet Valley High, for continuing that. There's this small B plot or C plot within the B plot of the whole trivia of it all, where there's a boy on the opposing trivia team, David Campbell, who is so cute. And when Jess is describing how cute she is, she notes that he has eyes and wrinkles around his eyes, just like her dad. And she says that to her dad. And it's just like, guys, family therapy and individual therapy immediately. But there's also this very strange thing where Jessica basically is like, I'm going to date him and then he's going to let me win. And it was very strange. She basically asks him to let her win. He says no. She gets upset. And then, spoiler alert, she beats him anyways and she and Amy win. And it's just like, why did I just don't like thinking about Jess thinking that her only gift is like dating. Like she couldn't win on her own. She needs to have some guy go easy on her. It made me sad.
Me too, but I guess the happy way to see it would be that's the message of the book, or like her lesson of the book is like, Jess, you don't need, like, Jess, you are competent, you are capable, you are smart. you can get these things on your own, like, and her actually hopefully learning that.
Okay. I mean, I'm keeping them crossed, as I hope you are as well.
I mean,
She knows how many fluid cups are in a gallon, I'll tell you that. And David certainly doesn't.
I did like that. I liked two things about David. Not two things, but things he did twice. Which was, I thought he had a pretty good attitude.
Okay.
So first, when she asked him to throw the competition for her, I thought he was going to react angry or something. That's a pretty whatever thing to ask someone. Like, I don't know. I just didn't expect that, like, he'd be cool, but he was very good natured. He basically was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But he was still like happy to hang out with her. And then she like ran in the door angry at him or whatever. And then they did the competition and the girls beat them and they were like, great, good game. Want to go get pizza? And I was happy that he also wasn't sour about that. So I'm like, oh, I mean, I don't think we'll ever hear from him again, but I'm like, he could potentially be decent.
He seems like a decent enough guy. I did like that he didn't have the kind of classic Sweet Valley High and other things where it's like, was I just a bet the whole time? Like, you're only dating me because you want me to throw the game? He's like, no, you're dating me because I'm hot and I know a lot of trivia, although I do not know how many fluid cups are in a gallon.
How many
and,
fluid
like,
cups are in a gallon?
16. It's in the book. It's in the text.
And this is why.
Well, so it's 4 cups in a quart, 4 quarts in a gallon. So 4 times 4, 16.
If you say so.
I mean, Amy and Jess say so. They said it in unison after David got the question wrong. He said 24. And I like that there was some trivia writing. I do just a quick kind of time machine note to Francine. I think people wanted to see a little bit more of the match because basically the way they described the trivia match was like David and his teammate crushed in the first round, but then Jess and Amy came back in the second round, and then it was all tied up and down to this one final question. And I was like, could we, like, I don't need to be full on Slumdog Millionaire, but I'd like to see a little bit of like something that Jess and Amy would just know from who they are as people, or like a cheerleading flash round or so, like something where it's like.
I 100% agree. There's so many ways to connect the questions and them winning and knowing answers to stuff to aspects of their lives, stories, personalities, interests, and so on that would have then been also validating in, oh, different types of knowledge have value and so forth.
Exactly.
Like maybe she could have answered something about, you know, the pop star Tony Sargent or something like that.
Or fashion, you know,
Yeah.
what kind of notched color, what kind of manicure, etc.
Mm-hmm. Beauty science, like
Oh, yeah.
Second. Fernie.
Yeah, of course. Never forget Fernie. French. But she did read absurdist plays. But again, only for school. So no points awarded, Fernie. I wondered, and I made a note of this. There's a lot of Jessica meddling in the relationship between Todd and Liz and the relationship between Liz and Jeffrey. And I was like, oh, I wonder if Pardo is reading some of this in an interesting way. Like, there's a moment where Jess thinks to herself, oh, Liz is still going to the PTA dinner with Todd because she's still attached to Todd. And then there's a moment later when Jess is impersonating Liz to kind of smooth things over with Jeffrey. And I was like, oh, I wonder if Pardo is going to think about, is this kind of Jessica enacting in some ways her lust for Jeffrey in a safer way or something? You know what I mean? Is there something there or no? Or did you think that at all? Or am I just projecting onto you?
I think it is there if we want to have the reading of there being a thing between possible chemistry between Jess and Jeffrey. I also think there's a reading of like, it's funny because the book starts with like Liz being resentful because she's always doing all this work and Jessica takes advantage. But like in some ways, Jessica's doing a lot of emotional work on behalf of Liz, not saying it's right or wrong, but in the sense that like Liz is always in denial of her emotions and she refuses to have conversations with any of her boyfriends about what's going on or how she feels. And Jessica's always like reading her face and reading her passive actions and behaviors and being like, is she really upset about this? Is she really upset about that? And like, well, she's not going to talk to them. So I'm not saying it was a good thing to do for Jessica to do all this nonsense and like meddle, but she also did it because Elizabeth wasn't doing it. The same way, like the only reason Jeffrey and Liz got together in the first place was because Jessica confronted Liz on the beach and was like, admit you fucking like Jeffrey and just deal with this. We could read it, I think, a lot of different ways. I think I find it sort of interesting that it's like sort of an unacknowledged labor that Jessica does for Liz, this like proxy relationship.
I do find that
The
interesting.
generous reading, I guess.
It's a very, very, very generous reading, but that's okay. I love your generosity.
I laughed that like in the end when Liz has this dream hallucination of Jessica's death and she sees their old pediatrician, Dr. Davis, in the hospital. After when she wakes up, she is telling everyone what she dreamt. And Jess is like, but Liz, Dr. Davis lives in Arizona now. I just thought that was funny.
As if that's like the
Yeah.
most ridiculous part of the whole thing. Well, I just want to say about the dream sequence, I do like that they don't make it explicit that it's a dream sequence. There are like weirdnesses, but I think you could read I knew it was a dream sequence basically instantly, mostly just because of like, there's no way they're just gonna have Jessica die. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I was trying to come up with alternate explanations. And my first one before it was super clear it was a dream sequence was like, oh, maybe they misidentified the body and we get to kill Amy Sutton. And I got excited about that. But then it was just like, the way they did it was kind of like, it's kind of interesting to me. I don't know. The way that like she rushes out of the house and then Todd happens to be there and you're like, that's kind of coincidental. And then Todd drives her to the hospital and then her parents are already there. It's like, oh, how are her parents there? But then it's like, oh, and then she faints and then she gets tranquilizers. And it's just, there's like parts of this where it's like, oh wait, who knows? Maybe this is a dream. Maybe this isn't a dream. And then you get like moments where it's very clearly a dream. Like she changes clothing really quickly, but she doesn't know how. And she's wearing a dress that doesn't make sense and all of this kind of stuff. But I don't like a dream sequence in general, but I think this is one of the slightly better done of them than we've seen or than we could see.
I agree with you. It's sort of realistic in terms of what dreams can feel like.
Yeah.
Which is they don't feel, you're not in a dream like freaking twirling around like Alice in Wonderland, being like, where am I? What is this freaky deaky place? Like, no, you're like, oh, like I'm in this house, but something's a little bit off. Or wait, this person's here. And yeah, I think the Todd just randomly being there, it's like suddenly Todd was just there. It's not fantastical, but it's strange. So yeah, I agree. I liked that too. As a sort of aficionado of nightmares myself.
Yeah, I know.
It was very well done.
Oh, the only other thing I wanted to talk about was kind of the homosocial ending of Todd and Jeffrey becoming best friends. Am I frozen?
And Liz's dream of them fighting. Did you have any thoughts of? There's a part in Liz's dream sequence of Jeffrey and Todd like getting to a physical fight. So I don't know what Stephen's psychoanalysis would have to say about that,
but it felt pretty explosive to me. They were coming to blows, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and then at the end, they don't do that, but they win a nice ski
relay.
Skis.
They do a ski relay where literally Todd hands Jeffrey a baton as if to say, you are the new guardian of Liz's heart. You own her now. I no longer own her. But I also just like the closeted high school kid in me just feels like I so relate to Todd, like doing this sporting thing with this hot sporty guy and being like, ooh, and like Todd has such a clear queer crush on Jeffrey.
You think he does?
Oh, yeah. They're just like, he's like, you're a terrific skier, Jeffrey. Todd said appreciatively, shaking his hand. You should come out to Vermont and teach me a few tricks.
My dear Suzanne doesn't care. She has her own thing going on.
It just like, and then Jeffrey's very sweet and he's like, oh, you weren't half bad yourself. And I'll take you up on the first part of that anyway. Nice being your partner. Slapping Todd on the back once more. And you can just
Partner means gay. Partner famously means gay.
Partner does famously mean gay. But I think Jeffrey's just being supportive. I think Jeffrey's a no homo. I think Todd is like, Jeffrey sees that Todd wants it bad and it's Jeffrey's like trying to be there for him.
Gay. There's a lot of gay. Jeffrey's not gay.
Jeffrey's not a gay.
Jeffrey's just nice to everyone the same. Jeffrey, that's his quality. And that's why he's like, nice
gay
because he's nice to everyone.
Exactly. But you can just, I could feel like radiating it off the pages, like Todd swooning as Jeffrey pats him on the back, and he's like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, like a needle in the butt.
You know, it wouldn't necessarily kill you to write a fanfic.
I guess it wouldn't hurt anything if
No, I'm
maybe
just
we
thinking, like,
had-
literally, like, why not? Like, why
I mean-
haven't we done that? Or should I research what's out there first? Let me
Please
research.
do, because I don't want to tread in someone else's kind of well-trodden steps. But like, it basically writes itself. Like,
Let me tell you, Elliot once took me down a rabbit hole of Babysitter's Club erotic fan fiction. It's uncomfortable. It's
Yeah, I don't wanna get in
uncomfortable. Let's just say Marianne gets
nope,
more
nope,
than she bargained for.
no, we're not going to
There's one
say.
called Marianne and the Dirty Daddies. It's called Marianne and
Stop
the
it.
Dirty Daddies.
Stop it, please. I don't like to silence women, but I do like to silence you. Could we end with just like kind of a throwback moment?
Yeah.
So a long table was set up at one end of the room, and it was filled with delicious-looking desserts. Cakes with white icing, mounds of vanilla ice cream, and snow white cookies.
Okay.
Fuck, marry, kill. Cakes with white icing, mounds of vanilla ice cream, snow white cookies.
This is easy for me.
Okay.
Well, what is
Can I
Snow
wait?
White?
Can I guess or no? No, you go first.
Yeah, you can, but what's Snow White cookies?
I assume they're like sugar cookies that are iced and decorated. I think you're gonna kill the ice cream because of your lactose situation.
That's correct.
I think you're gonna fuck that cookie just to get a little snow in you. And I think you're gonna marry that cake with white icing.
I might have to fuck the cake depending on what's in the icing. Here's the thing. Last night at this Russian bath place, we had this
Famously.
sour cream cake. I did bring lactate,
Obviously.
and we ate in our robes. And I had my bottle of lactate in the robe pocket, and I did leave it at the bathhouse.
Are you going back for
So,
it today, or have you already
I'm
gone
down
back?
to one bottle of lactate. No, it's like very far away. So
I hope that they take it out of your robe and like offer it to everyone who my hope is that like
they should, yeah, make it a
you're
public,
paying it
a
forward.
public resource. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like a little free library, but it's like a little free lactate library.
That should be a thing because you never know when you need it.
Exactly.
It's like
Don't get me started on
tampons.
tampons. They should be everywhere.
That's why. Wait, we just said the exact same time. We're twins.
Wait, twins on the outside or twins on the inside?
Well, anything
Not
else
that
to
you
tell me?
asked.
what?
I would
Oh,
kill the Snow White cookie. Oh, sorry. Oh, you've already. Sorry.
wait. No, I'm just thinking. What is it? It's cake, cookie, and ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I already know you're going to kill the cookies. I heard you say it.
Yeah, sorry.
What's the description of the cake again? Do we have any more details?
Cakes with white icing. Sounds like Knights of White Satin.
And what? Vanilla ice cream?
Mounds of vanilla ice cream.
Oh God, I think you're going to marry the cake. Fuck the ice cream. Am I crazy? Was it the reverse?
No, you're right.
Okay.
I'm marrying that cake. Cake's an anytime food for me. Now, one thing I'm wondering, Pardo, is what should I do if I have a friend who's having some kind of like terrible, terrible nightmare and she dreams that her twin sister has died and it's all her fault? Is there anything I could do to cheer her up when she wakes from that nightmare? Anything I could do to help put her in the right frame of mind? Any suggestions?
Maybe she'd like something that she can listen to in a sort of ambient state and be kind of lulled into a gentle relaxation by the dulcet tones of a couple of nice
Doctors.
friends. Tell them they should listen to our next podcast.
And while you're doing that, I mean, you've already got the podcast open because you're going to hit that share button with them. You might as well also hit the rate button and give us five big ones. And maybe if you've got the time, maybe you write a little note that says something like, oh, I love them. Oh, they're such good friends. They make me laugh and laugh, but they also make me think, or something like that. Go with what moves you.
Yeah, like they made me laugh and laugh and laugh. And then maybe you had a sort of sharding situation in a public restroom. You know, maybe you was it a sort of emergency kind of scenario. You sort of expelled some sort of fluids, as it were. You know, we're not responsible for this. Listen, that's between you
And your God.
know, your God, your doctor, and your local, barista at Starbucks. But I think for the most part, it will be relaxing and not diarrhea inducing.
Wait, it must be asked, why did you bring up sharding?
Because maybe you're laughing, and then the bowels are kind of the rectum is sort of loosening, as it were.
So much of a loose rectum. Have you ever sharded? Have you ever sharded yourself?
At least twice. Once was at work.
Just so we can situate ourselves, how close to Mark Zuckerberg did you shit yourself?
Different work.
Okay.
It was other work. I was literally sitting at my desk. I was like, and I sharted. It was like, I thought it was a fart. Famous last words.
Yeah.
And I went to the bathroom. I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, something in my tummy was not right. So I had to throw out my
Well, sure.
underwears
Obviously.
and sent a little DM to my boss saying, gotta run, not feeling so good. And, there was no bus that went to my house or train or anything. So it was always, I walked every day, always, it was like 30 minutes there and back. There was no other way. So I did a little bit of not comfortable. And then the second time was just in my house once. I just woke up. I thought it was a fart. My business. I woke up. I thought it was a regular day. Turned out I had a stomach, scenario. What about you? I know you've been having an active bowel lately.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So when I was teaching, I can remember that I had like a little stomach flu, and it was a snowy day, like so much of Winter Carnival. I was scraping the ice off of my windshield so that I could get in my car and drive to teach. And I reached to scrape, and I reached to scrape, and then I reached a little farther to scrape, and it just.
Wow.
And then I just emailed in like, I'm sick, gotta run.
But so it started as a fart.
I mean, yeah, I assume it started as a fart. I think it always starts as a fart, does it not?
In terms of like what you thought was happening.
No. I didn't have that kind of process. It just was like, I'm reaching and the heavens opened.
Okay,
or the hellmouth opened.
Whoa, to me, that's completely different from sharding. That's legit shitting your pants. I mean, the whole point of sharding is you think it's a fart. That's why you let it go.
I mean, but yeah,
I'm not blaming you. Because there's also
feels.
No, because sometimes you can't, and you just have to shit your pants. Like, I understand. I've been there, not in adulthood. I've been only in sharding adulthood, but I get it. But so that's just what I was trying to understand. Which experience was it? What did you think was happening? Was there any control?
No, there was no control. No, just loose bowels. They say loose bowels sink ships.
Were you sick?
Yeah, then I went inside and emailed my boss and was like, it's a no for me today.
For some reason, it's just funny picturing you.
Well, it's because I'm doing manual labor, which doesn't seem like it's, what I normally do.
Oh, we have fun.
We shit ourselves.
You know what happened on that show? Let me tell you what happened on the show. It's not a spoiler. This one girl, she had pooped for 25 days. That she ate too much fish. Let's just say it wasn't pretty. And the text on screen is like, she is at risk for bowel leaking into her other organs and dying from poison.
How incredibly bleak and disgusting. Well, I think that's a great note to end this podcast.
Oh, wait, will you watch it? It's on Netflix.
I might.
Go watch something.
You gotta watch something.
Gotta watch something.
Gotta watch something.
Love you, bye.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.